I had just kicked off my shoes and shrugged off the tailored blazer that still smelled like stress and recycled conference room air when I heard a knock. Not hesitant, not timid, firm, measured, like someone who had every right to be here. I paused halfway through, unzipping my laptop bag, heart tightening as I stepped toward the door. My building had a security system. No one just showed up. But when I looked through the peephole, the air in my lungs froze. It was Joelle. Behind her arms crossed like a sentry stood Vernon. My mother looked older, but in that carefully preserved way, lipstick too bright for midday earrings too big for the occasion. Vernon hadn't changed much. Same rigid posture, same expression that made it seem like warmth had been surgically removed from his face. I opened the door but didn't move aside. Marin Joelle said, her voice breezy like we'd just talked last week. "Can we come in?" "We need to talk." Before I could answer, Vernon stepped forward and crossed the threshold without waiting. Joelle followed with a brief, awkward smile. I closed the door behind them slower than necessary. I didn't offer them the couch. I didn't ask how they'd been. I stood still, watching, feeling the pressure in my chest rising like steam trapped in a sealed pot. Vernon got to the point. "Of course he did. We heard about your new role, Director of Strategic Systems, right big deal. Sounds like you're doing well." I nodded once, carefully, neutral. He continued. "Cleo and Asa are starting college this fall. Expenses are stacking up. We figured with how well you're doing, you might be in a position to help." It didn't hit all at once. First came disbelief, then something sharper, recognition. They weren't here for reconciliation. They weren't here to acknowledge the years of silence, the empty birthdays, the loan I asked for at 18 that they pretended never arrived. They were here because I was finally worth something. Joelle chimed in like she was sweetening the ask. "They've worked hard, Marin, just like you did. And you know how tight things are for everyone right now?" I said nothing. My jaw ached from clenching. My eyes drifted to Vernon, who was already scanning the apartment like he was cataloging the things I owned. A successful life in his mind was a bank account waiting to be tapped. What shocked me most wasn't their gall, it was how utterly unsurprised I was. It was the way my body remembered to brace itself before my mind had even caught up. I stepped back toward the door but didn't open it. My hand found the knob again. I gripped it tightly, grounding myself in something real, something solid. My other hand trembled slightly, barely noticeable. They didn't see it. They never did. I didn't ask them to leave, but I also didn't offer them a seat. Before the silence, before the forgetting, there were nights when my mother and I lived in a rhythm all our own. We shared a small apartment above Nana Ruth's garage on Sycamore Street, just the two of us. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the heater groaned louder than the wind in winter, but it felt like home. My mother worked long shifts as a physical therapy assistant while going to school part-time, and I learned early how to reheat leftover rice and tie my shoes without asking. Still, every night, no matter how tired she was, she came home to me. Sometimes we'd eat microwave dinners cross-legged on the couch, watching reruns through static. Other nights she'd read aloud from worn paperbacks, her voice slurring just a bit on the longer words. I'd pretend not to notice how her eyes fluttered from exhaustion before the end of the chapter. I'd nudge her shoulder and say, "Keep going," and she always tried. Back then, love didn't need words. It was a warm towel after a bath, a forehead kiss between bites, her hand reaching behind her without looking just to make sure I was still there. When Vernon entered the picture, it didn't feel like a disruption, not at first. He was soft-spoken and polite, brought flowers from the grocery store, and smiled with his mouth more than his eyes. I was 9 when they met, 11 when they married. He moved into our little space above the garage for a few months before they got a mortgage, and we left Nana Ruth's warmth behind. At first, I was curious. He didn't talk to me much, but he didn't yell either. He existed beside me like furniture, solid, present, easy to ignore. But slowly the tone in our home shifted. The apartment got quieter in strange ways. Dinner became something we did quickly and without conversation. No more sitting on the couch. No more books read aloud. The routines we'd built were replaced by new ones that didn't include me. He'd talk about work politics, something he saw on TV, and Joelle's mom would nod, laugh, ask follow-up questions. When I tried to chime in, my words floated out unanswered, like they'd been absorbed into the walls. I told myself it was nothing, just grown-up stuff, just stress, just change. But then it was my math test left unsigned. Then it was her missing my science fair. Then it was the night she forgot to say goodnight at all. One night I said, "Do you remember when we used to read?" She looked at me like I'd asked about a dream she only half remembered. I still stayed close, still hovered waiting for her to look back and see me. But she never did. And the day she told me she was pregnant with twins, she smiled like it was the best news in the world. When Joelle told me she was pregnant, I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. "Twins," she said, laughing nervously, one hand on her barely there belly. Can you believe it? I could. And I wanted to believe it meant something good. I pictured helping her fold tiny clothes, reading picture books on the floor, showing them how to spell their names and tie their shoes. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would bring us closer again. That I could be part of this new version of our family. I started babysitting for neighbors, saving my small earnings in a plastic envelope labeled Baby Fund. I made a list of names I liked and imagined them calling me Big Sis. I practiced warming bottles with Nana Ruth during weekends just to be ready. But as Joelle's belly grew, so did the space between us. She stopped asking me about school. Our movie nights vanished. When I handed her a quiz I got an A on, she glanced at it, mumbled good job, and walked away. One afternoon, I came home to find my bedroom rearranged, half my shelves cleared to make room for boxes of baby clothes. No one had asked. At dinner, it was all about Vernon's job and her cravings and the nursery paint colors. I became part of the furniture again, only now I knew it. I sat smaller, spoke less, waited longer to be noticed. When my 13th birthday came around, I waited all day. No cake, no card, no mention. Just a regular Wednesday with dishes to rinse and homework to finish. I told myself maybe she was planning a surprise. That night I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling, hands folded tight to keep from shaking. The tears came anyway, quiet ones, the kind you learn to cry when you don't want anyone to hear. She remembered the next morning. Nana Ruth had called to remind her. Joelle gave me a card from the dollar store with an apologetic kiss on the head. "Sorry, honey. I've just been so tired." I nodded. Said it was fine. After that, I stopped expecting things. Vernon started correcting me more. "Don't talk with your mouth full. You're too old for that tone. Why aren't you helping more?" But he never asked how I was. Never noticed when I shrank further into myself. Joelle was always somewhere else, even when she was in the room. And when the twins were born, the shift was complete. There were feedings and diapers and milestones. There were photo frames that only held their faces. There were cooing visitors and baby showers and endless bottles lined up on the counter. There was no space left for me. And it hit me one night watching Joelle rock one of the babies to sleep, humming softly, her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She hadn't just become a mother again. She had become a new one. It happened on a Thursday. Dinner was baked chicken and instant mashed potatoes, the kind Joelle made when she was too tired to pretend. The twins were fussy. Vernon was irritable, and I was trying to stay invisible, clearing plates before anyone asked, scraping food into the trash, quietly stacking dishes without clatter. I thought I'd done everything right. After the twins were down, Joelle called me into the living room. Vernon sat on the edge of the couch, his hands folded like he was about to deliver a sermon. Joelle didn't sit. She stood behind him, arms crossed over her chest, eyes fixed on a spot somewhere near the carpet. Marin Vernon began not unkind but detached, like he was talking to a tenant instead of a child. "Things are tight. The babies need more room, more time, more of Joelle's attention. We've been trying to make it all work, but it's getting harder." I stood in the doorway, still holding a dish towel, my fingers clenched around the damp fabric. He continued, "We think it's best if you stay with your grandmother for a while, just until things settle down." Joelle still hadn't looked at me. The towel in my hand was soaked now, dripping onto the hardwood. I couldn't feel my legs. "Just until I get on my feet," I asked, though I wasn't sure who I was asking. Vernon gave a tight nod. Joelle just nodded. No protest, no hesitation. That was the worst part. I went to my room and packed slowly, like if I moved gently enough, none of it would be real. A few shirts, my school books, a framed photo of me and Nana Ruth at the county fair, both of us laughing sticky with cotton candy. I left the rest posters, the notebook under my mattress, the paper star I'd made for Joelle one Christmas and found weeks later shoved in a drawer. The hallway felt longer than usual when I stepped out. Vernon said nothing. Joelle stood near the doorway but didn't hug me, didn't ask if I had enough socks or if I wanted her to walk me there. She opened the door and let the cold air spill in. I walked the few blocks to Nana Ruth's with my backpack pulling on one shoulder and the night pressing down on the other. I didn't cry. Not yet. She opened the door before I even knocked. I must have been visible from the window, a small figure in a too-light jacket. "Oh, baby," she whispered, pulling me in, wrapping her arms around me like she could stitch something broken back together just by holding it tight enough. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't have to. Behind her, my Aunt Simone stood in the hallway with a blanket in her arms and a look that said she'd known this was coming all along. The first thing I learned living with Nana Ruth was that love could be quiet and consistent. The second thing I learned was that love didn't pay for school supplies or bus fare. They gave me everything they could, a spare room with mismatched furniture, warm meals, space to breathe, but they were retired living on fixed incomes, and I could see the way Nana's hands trembled whenever the mail brought bills. So I got a job at the Sunrise Diner a few blocks from school. Weekends, evenings, school breaks, whenever I wasn't in class, I was in an apron, refilling coffee, clearing sticky syrup off laminated menus, counting crumpled dollar bills at the end of the shift, and walking home with my feet aching through thin sneakers. I didn't complain. I didn't tell anyone. Not my teachers. Not the other kids. I smiled when I had to raise my hand when I could, and kept my grades steady because I knew that was the only way out. Simone used to leave little notes in my lunchbox. "Keep climbing or I see you." Sometimes I kept them in my pocket through a shift like armor. Senior year came faster than I expected. I applied to 5 colleges, half of them on a whim, just to see if someone out there might see something in me. When the first acceptance letter came, I opened it in the back room of the diner on my break. I didn't scream. I didn't even smile at first. I just stared at the words until they made sense. "We are pleased to offer you admission." Then came the math. Even with a partial scholarship and a Pell Grant, it wasn't enough. I needed a federal loan, which meant I needed a co-signer. I sat at Nana's kitchen table drafting the message to Joelle, wrote it, deleted it, wrote it again. Finally, I hit send. "Hi, Mom. I got into a few schools. I'm working on financial aid, but I need a co-signer for a loan." "Would you be willing?" she replied the next morning. "Sorry, we're saving for Cleo and Asa. Hope you understand." That was it. No congratulations, no questions. Just a flat rejection like she was turning down a telemarketing offer. I stared at the screen until the words stopped hurting. When I told Simone, she didn't flinch. She just nodded like she'd expected it. "Okay," she said. "Then I'll do it." I blinked. "You don't have to. I know I don't," she said. "But I'm going to." She signed the papers the next day, no questions asked, no guilt attached. Just a signature that said, "I believe in you." And that was enough to carry me through the next 4 years. College wasn't glamorous. It wasn't late-night parties or campus clubs or dorm rooms strung with fairy lights. For me, it was instant noodles, discount coffee, and the hum of a second-hand laptop as I taught myself how to build websites from YouTube videos and free tutorials. During the day, I sat through lectures and took meticulous notes. At night, I worked remotely for a small florist chain, fixing broken code and managing their online orders. I learned to live on 3 hours of sleep and carry eye drops in my bag. Some days I thought I might disappear entirely from exhaustion, but then I'd open my inbox and see a message from Simone. Just a heart, just a sunflower, just something that reminded me I wasn't doing this alone. I never posted about it, didn't talk about it with anyone but her. I didn't want congratulations. I wanted stability, a life I could build with my own hands, brick by silent brick. When graduation came, Simone was there in the front row, wearing a blue dress that didn't quite fit eyes red before I even reached the stage. I looked for Joelle once, just once, but I knew better. Her absence was the only consistent thing she'd given me. Simone took a photo of me holding my degree in one hand and a half-eaten granola bar in the other. Proof, she said, grinning. You did it. After that, the years blurred. I moved to Asheville, took a job in logistics, moved up quietly, slowly, taught myself new systems, built a modest life in a quiet apartment with a porch full of potted herbs and peace I didn't dare name out loud. Sometimes I scrolled through old photos of the twins on Joelle's page, birthday cakes, school awards, family vacations to places I'd never been invited. I stopped one day without really deciding to. Just closed the tab, blocked the account, not out of anger, just preservation. My world became calm, steady, mine. Until last fall at a cousin's baby shower, Simone made a comment in passing. Something about a project I was leading, how proud she was, how far I'd come. I don't think she even noticed who was standing behind her plate of fruit and hand plastic fork, paused midair. Joelle. She didn't say anything right away, just blinked, tilted her head, and for the first time in over a decade, her eyes followed me across a room like I was someone worth noticing. 3 days later, they showed up at my door. They stood in my living room like they still had a place in it. Joelle's smile flickered the moment I didn't mirror it. Vernon's arms were crossed, his stance casual but heavy with expectation. We heard about your new role, Joelle said again, as if I hadn't already heard her say it on the porch. It's amazing, Marin. You've come so far. I said nothing, let her fill the silence. Vernon jumped in. The twins are both starting school this fall, good schools. But tuition's a stretch, and we figured, you're in a good position now. You could help? Help. Like it was an obligation. Like I owed them something for surviving without them. Joelle's tone softened syrupy. We know it's a big ask. But you're doing well, and it's what families do, support each other when they can. I looked at her, then really looked. And I saw the years that had passed, not just on her face, but in the gap between who she once was and who she chose to become. You weren't there when I needed you, I said, voice steady. You didn't sign the loan. You didn't show up to graduation. You didn't call, not once. Joelle's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being clear. I made it without you. And now you want to act like we're still a family? Vernon scoffed. You don't have kids? You're not married? What else are you spending money on? I turned to him. Peace. Therapy. Rent I earned without guilt attached. Joelle's eyes sharpened. This is selfish. I breathed in slowly, letting it settle in my chest before I answered. No, I said. This is healed. The room felt still, not tense, just finished. I walked to the door, opened it, and held it without saying a word. They stood frozen for a beat, then Joelle stepped forward, brushing past me. Vernon followed, mumbling something I didn't catch. I didn't slam the door, just closed it firmly. And then I stood there, hand on the knob, steady in a way I never knew I could be. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a blank email draft waiting. No rage, no essays, just one final boundary written in words that didn't tremble. Joelle, I wish you and your family well, but I am not in a position emotionally or otherwise to support your request. Please do not contact me again. Marin, I read it once, then again, then pressed send without hesitation. There were no posts, no rants, no cryptic quotes online, just stillness, a silence that belonged to me this time. That afternoon, I logged into the donation portal for my old community college. Under purpose, I typed scholarship fund for first-generation students without a cosigner. I listed it in Ruth Ellery's name. She'd never used a computer in her life, but I think she'd have liked that. The confirmation pinged in my inbox, and I let myself exhale. A long, quiet breath I hadn't known I was holding since I was 15. Later, I stepped onto the porch and crouched beside the lavender plant Simone had given me when I moved here. The soil was dry, the stems leaning slightly toward the sun. I watered it gently, watching the earth darken and settle. Nothing about my life had come easy, but some things had finally learned to bloom, and this time I wasn't waiting for anyone else to notice.